What's up guys, Andrew here on my channel GearedInc, where I get to share what I'm passionate about with you. And on my channel that's PC tech, games, and gear. And today we're talking about a subject that I care quite a bit about, holiday shopping, specifically Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Now, I'm a big gift giver, and typically the biggest gifts I give are to myself. But this year is going to be a little bit different because me and my wife had our first child a little over 2 months ago. So my family is going to be getting love and affection, which is just as good, right? No, it's not. Stuff is good. So that being said, I wanted to share some of my tips, tricks, things I've picked up over the last 12 years of doing like Black Friday, Cyber Monday shopping. Now, I don't have an affiliate link. I don't benefit in any way by, trying to push certain products. This is just my point of view. And so I want to share kind of what I've picked up over the years if you're a PC or a gamer or an enthusiast looking to build your first computer or upgrade. So firstly, you want to have a plan. And what I mean by that is that a lot of people get sucked into the pre-Black Friday, Cyber Monday deals. But the best deals usually are going to be on those days, so I'd recommend holding off as long as you can. Also, make a list of what you want. It's much easier if you're not really caring about the CPU or GPU in terms of like maybe you just want a 1080 Ti, but you don't really care what brand it is, you just want the cheapest one. It's easier if you have a list of those things so that you can move quickly, because obviously stocks do run out and you want to be able to take advantage of the deal. Now, in buying PC parts or upgrading this year, there's really a couple options you can take. So the first one is Intel. There are only two CPUs in that SKU that I would recommend, the 8700K and the 8600K. The reason why is because even though Kaby Lake is awesome, it's 4 cores for the same cost as an i5 8600K, which is 2 more physical cores, and cores trump threads every single time. In terms of gaming, they're exactly the same, and yet with the extra 2 cores, you can stream and do productivity. Those two CPUs, rather, are my picks if you are going to be building on the Intel side. If there's nothing really else in Kaby Lake or anything below that, I'd honestly pick. And I'm going to go into the reasons why. Now, there's 2 downfalls right now with Kaby Lake. The 8700K and the 8600K are constantly out of stock, which maybe you might not even be able to get your hands on this, so this all might be a moot point. And that's the first problem. Secondly, the costs have gone up since they released. The MSRP on both those CPUs is supposed to be less than what it's currently listed at right now. That's another huge problem. Something else to take into consideration is that the chipset is not going to be very upgradable, and what I mean by that is that Cannon Lake is going to be the next iteration from Intel coming out next year. And with that coming out, there might be a refresh for Kaby Lake, but I wouldn't hold your breath. Remember that the chipset currently is the 370. They're doing a refresh, or the official, I should say, chipset is coming out in Q1 of next year. So if you buy with Kaby Lake, you're pretty much, that's what you got, until you build a new chipset or whatever, right? Typical PC upgrade stuff. And so just understand if that's what you're going to go with, you're kind of stuck with those 2 SKUs. Now, let's talk about AMD. The reason that I didn't recommend anything other out of the Intel side is because on the AMD side, their value still kicks all kinds of ass. I am not a fanboy. I say this all the time. I'm really not. I just go off of value. Now, value can be things like cost, it can be performance, it can be looks, it can be a specific brand. Whatever you value is what you value, but AMD is really hard in terms of both performance and cost to beat across the board with everything else that Intel's kind of released against it this year. So let's talk about this. In terms of buying a R7, if you're buying an 8-core CPU from AMD, I recommend the 1700 or 1700X. 1700 comes with an included CPU fan, which is actually pretty good for overclocking, or you can do the 1700X to give you a little more wiggle room and buy an aftermarket cooler. Same is said for the 1600, 1600X. That is basically the sweet spot. It's like been one of the most valued CPU for Ryzen, and just kind of this year their sales have been crazy for that specific SKU, and it's because it's a very good entry-level 6-core CPU, which allows you to game, stream, edit, whatever you want to do on a budget. Now, that's the other thing AMD has going for it. Besides being cheaper than Intel, their motherboards across the board are also significantly cheaper. There's not a budget option for Kaby Lake yet, so you're going to be able to get into that platform, and it's going to last longer. Your upgrade path should last through the Ryzen refresh coming out next year, and potentially Ryzen 2 leading up into 2020. So that is something you have to take into consideration, that if you buy your motherboard of that platform, you have a lot of good upgrade paths moving forward, which maybe that's something you value too. Now, I don't really recommend the 1500X, 1500, 1400, anything in there. They're kind of a weird CPU because for just a little bit more money you can get the 1600. So if you're doing very entry level, I'd recommend the R3 series over the i3, and that's because of overclockability. This is something else that Ryzen has going for it. All the Ryzen CPUs are overclockable. The only one in their SKU set for the i3s is the 8350 or the 8350K, I believe is what it is. And in terms of performance, looking at benchmarks and different things, there's not a significant enough difference for me to recommend it. Now, the one thing that AMD has against it is its strength is its weakness. You have to get comparative performance against Intel, you have to overclock it. And so if you're not comfortable doing that, or you don't know what you're doing, or you're not going to take advantage of that, that might influence your decision a little bit. Also, Ryzen is RAM hungry. It directly benefits from faster RAM due to how the architecture works with each other. So you're going to have to get a faster kit. 3000 or higher is what I recommend. Definitely get at least 8 GB, either a single stick, or I recommend actually getting 4 sticks of RAM. 4 GB sticks of RAM, so you can run them in dual channel, and that way they're going to run a little faster as well, as far as kind of like the minimum rung there. Now, those are kind of your options if you're buying new. GPU wise, AMD really has nothing to offer right now, unfortunately. I really was rooting for them, but the problem is that RX series are still in inflation. Vega underperformed against Nvidia, so Nvidia I think is 100% the way to go. 1050 Ti, I have it in my wife's computer. I played Battlefield 1 on it, PUBG at medium to high settings, 60 FPS, 1080p. It's a really good value, and then as you go up, 1060 is still cheaper than the 580, and it's the exact same performance. And then if you go up to the 1070, 1070 Ti, wherever that exists, 1080, they all beat out Vega. So unless you have a FreeSync monitor and that's the reason you want Vega, if you're starting from scratch or upgrading and you're not locked into G-Sync or FreeSync, definitely go with Nvidia. At least I would. All right, so now let's talk about the third option, used parts. Now, if you're an enthusiast, you're going to be spending a lot of money this holiday season because you're an enthusiast, or if you're building the first PC you've ever built. It's just, that's what happens, guys. Now, people are going to be either trying to recoup their losses or get back more money than their wife said they could spend on, their sales for Christmas, so they can buy gifts for their kids or whatever, right? So, what's going to happen is that if you're in the used market, it's a great time, a couple of weeks after the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, to pick up used parts. And I'm not even talking seriously old used. There's going to be Skylake users who just want extra cores going to Coffee Lake, and then you still have i7 5000 series, 4000 series, which still perform really good coming on the market because people are now making the hop to the next generation. From AMD, people have already kind of cycled out their older Athlon and Bulldozer architecture CPUs, but those are going to be still coming out on the market if you're doing a super, you want something more budget, like really budgeted wise. And I used to live off that stuff. Like my first 3 computers were like Frankenstein junkyard made PCs. I actually have a funny story about the first computer I personally built for myself that I didn't have any assistance with that maybe I'll share another time. But as far as if you are using for used parts, it's great because you're going to have this influx of just GPUs and CPUs and parts flooding the market. RAM not so much because it's so expensive. People are probably going to be holding on to that unless they're completely switching from DDR3 to DDR4. But there's going to be a lot of parts on Craigslist, locally, eBay. So check for those if you just want to stay super budget because potentially there's going to be some newer generations like Skylake hitting the market. And by the way, Skylake performs exactly the same as Kaby Lake and Coffee Lake does. It's just it just can't clock up, or the speed on it can't typically get as high, which is why it performs just a little bit worse. So guys, that's my opinion about this holiday season. If you like this video, leave me a thumbs up. If you didn't, go ahead and leave me a thumbs down. Hit that subscribe button, either way, the big red one. Guys, I'm so excited that my channel's continuing to grow. I'm weird. Every time I get 1 subscriber, I do a little dance because it really, for me, that's as cheesy as it sounds, it's been the greatest gift of all that I've been able to share what I love with people, and people want to hear me share it. So, anyway, guys, we hope to see you next time here on GearedInc.